Direct work planning. Right, so I'm a big believer in direct work, but there's several misconceptions out there about what constitutes direct work. Direct work is not just grabbing a colouring sheet or doing the same exercise with every single child on your visits. Anytime I ask a group of students or social workers to give me an example of direct work, someone always says the three houses. Now, there's nothing wrong with the three houses as a direct work tool. I use a modified version of it in this example. But it seems to be the only one that a lot of social workers actually know, and that's just not good enough in terms of practice and in terms of recording the work that you're doing. Go online and Google the Social Worker Toolbox. That's full of all these amazing tools. Just make sure that you understand the tool before you use it for the first time. Also, they come from all over the world, so remove any information which isn't relevant to your context. A tool from Australia would be very useful for most children, but phone numbers for the Brisbane Mental Health Service wouldn't help if the family's in the UK. What Susie's done here is draw up a small plan to help her plan the work that she's going to be doing with the children. This is going to assist her in staying on track and making sure that the direct work that she's going to do has an actual purpose rather than just doing direct work for its own sake. Sometimes I will see social workers have done some direct work with a family or with children, and it just doesn't really seem to have anything to do with what the case is about. So you can't just grab a piece of work, a template, a colouring thing, whatever it is, and take that out and try and squeeze the child into what that bit of direct work does. You need to make sure that you're doing the right bit of direct work for these children at this time. Let's have a look at what Susie's done with this plan. Name and age are pretty self-explanatory. Child info is about the child's interests and personality. How can you engage them and communicate effectively? It's not about what's happened to them. That may be relevant to their engagement and communication needs, especially if there's trauma, for example, but they as an individual are not defined by what happened. Specify the need that stems from what has happened to them. Don't specify the injury that they suffered, either physical, emotional, or whatever. So if a child's been abused or neglected and doesn't trust adults, talk about the fact that they don't trust adults and how you're going to try to build some trust with them, not just mention that they were abused and so don't trust people. If a child or a young person is on the spectrum, talk about what this specifically looks like for this child or young person. Don't just say that they have autism or whatever. Those sorts of terms, at best, flag children as being part of a specific cohort. They don't really help you engage with any specific individual. At worst, they just label children as being, this thing, as opposed to a child who is their own person but just so happens to have whatever. Trying to. What are you trying to do with this direct work? Now, often I'll see something like, get the child's wishes and feelings, but, and I want to be clear on this, that is not an acceptable entry. That's one of those phrases which is now completely meaningless due to incorrect overuse and vagueness. Specify what you're aiming for. Is there a topic that you're hoping to cover? Has the child said something and you want to get more information from them? Is this part of a Section 47 investigation and you've got to discuss an incident or a person of concern? Does the child have particular needs which mean that you have to work extra hard to get to know them? Be clear. You'll see that I've put something different next to build relationship with each child because each child is different. So that means something different depending on, what the child would need in order to build a relationship with them. Also, be realistic. Don't hold any expectations or push for a particular outcome. Quite often you're going to need to plan for direct work to take place over several sessions, and the first few will mainly be building the relationship. Trying to rush things will not help the child and possibly could make it worse. Putting pressure on a child who's been through a difficult time does not give them the impression that they can trust you. There may be circumstances when you have to get the information as a matter of urgency, so Section 47s, or whether you're looking to undertake a police protection or an emergency protection order, for example. But that's not going to be the norm unless that's the specific role that you're in. And even then, writing up a quick plan will help you keep on track and think about what this child needs. Tools. So Susie's identified which tools would be best suited to each child given what she knows about them, keeping in mind that that's not a lot. She's thought about what subjects engage the children's interests, and she's then thought about how she could merge the two together. So let's have a look at these. Here are the tools that Susie made. Now, I created these sheets with an AI image generator. If anyone's interested in me doing a session on how that works, let me know in the comments. It's not hard, but it can be a bit tricky because AI generators aren't that bright, and you have to describe the picture you want it to create in a certain way. Otherwise, you can get a bit of a mess. For example, some of the unicorns it created were straight out of an LSD nightmare. But once you know how to use it, it can be really helpful in making direct work tools which are tailor-made for a child's specific interests. Of course, once they're made, you can use them again for other children who are interested in those broad subjects. For me, the first sessions at the start of work with a family are around building a relationship and getting an idea about how the children experience their life at home. Sometimes a child will tell you something really crucial or important or make a disclosure, but in my experience, that tends to not happen first time there. In a previous video, I spoke about people forming a worldview. Is the world a happy or scary place? That sort of thing. My initial session with a child tries to understand the child's worldview, since that gives good information about the sort of vibe, I guess, that they grew up with, to use a technical term. Once you're into child in need or child protection or child in care work, then you should be planning direct work, which takes place over several weeks or months as part of your plan working with that child. I'll be talking about these down the track. If you want a copy of these two sheets, the dinosaurs and the unicorns, take a screen cap on the next two slides.